The night had started like any other in Hollywood. The lights on the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live shone bright, the audience clapped in rhythm, and the band played a jazzy number as Jimmy Kimmel strutted onto the stage with his signature smirk. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jimmy announced to the cheering crowd, "we've got a very special guest tonight. One of the most celebrated actors of our generation, a man who needs no introduction, Mr. Brad Pitt." The crowd erupted. Some fans screamed his name while others held up posters. Brad walked onto the stage, dressed casually in a crisp shirt and blazer, flashing that signature half-smile. He shook Jimmy's hand, waved to the audience, and sat down. At first, the conversation seemed harmless. Jimmy asked about Brad's new film, his role as a conflicted father in an indie drama. Brad, always charming, spoke passionately about the project. But then Jimmy leaned forward with a mischievous grin. "So, Brad," Jimmy said, "you've been in the news again. Not about the movies, though, more about your, let's call it colorful personal life. Care to clear the air?" The crowd chuckled, but Brad's smile thinned. He hated interviews that veered into tabloid gossip. "I'm here to talk about my film, Jimmy," Brad replied coolly, adjusting in his seat. "Oh, come on," Jimmy teased. "You've been dodging these questions for years. People want to know, how's the co-parenting with Angelina really going?" The audience gasped, some clapping nervously. Brad leaned back, his jaw tightening. "Jimmy, I don't think my kids appreciate being turned into late-night punchlines," he said sharply. The tension in the room grew thick. Jimmy, trying to play it off, laughed. "Relax, Brad. It's all in good fun." But Brad wasn't laughing. His piercing blue eyes locked onto Jimmy's. "You know what's not fun? Having my private life dragged out here like a circus. You invited me here to talk about my craft, not my divorce." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, the band stopped playing any background chords. Jimmy raised an eyebrow, clearly irritated. "Well, Brad, this is a late-night show. We mix the serious with the fun. If you can't handle a little heat, maybe you're in the wrong place." That was the spark. Brad leaned forward, his voice low but intense. "I've handled more heat in real life than you can ever imagine, Jimmy. Don't mistake politeness for weakness." The audience murmured, sensing the storm brewing. Jimmy tried to cut the tension with another joke, but Brad interrupted. "No, you listen," Brad said, pointing a finger. "You sit here night after night, making jokes about people's families, people's struggles. Maybe it's ratings for you, but for us, it's our lives. You want to humiliate me. Not tonight." The studio audience gasped again. Cameras caught Jimmy's stunned face as he tried to regain control. "All right, Brad, let's keep it professional," Jimmy muttered. But Brad wasn't done. "Professional. Professional is respecting your guest. Not ambushing them for gossip." The audience began whispering. A few clapped for Brad's boldness, while others looked shocked. Suddenly, Brad stood up. The cameras struggled to adjust as he towered over Jimmy. "You know what? I'm done." The crowd roared with shock. Jimmy tried to calm him. "Brad, sit down, we're live." But Brad ripped off his microphone. "No, I'm not going to let this show turn me into a tabloid headline. Find someone else to mock." And with that, Brad Pitt stormed off the stage, leaving Jimmy stunned and the audience in absolute chaos. Producers rushed in, the band awkwardly started playing to cover the tension, and Jimmy sat frozen, his trademark grin completely gone. The fallout began immediately. Within minutes, clips of Brad walking off the stage started spreading across social media. Twitter exploded with hashtags like #BradVsKimmel and #BradWalksOut. Some fans praised Brad for standing up for himself, while others criticized him for being too sensitive. Backstage, chaos unfolded. Brad paced angrily, his assistant trying to calm him down. "Brad, maybe you overreacted a little. The media's going to spin this like crazy." "Let them," Brad muttered. "I'd rather be known for walking out than sitting there while that man mocks my family." Meanwhile, Jimmy was scrambling with his producers. "Did we just lose Brad Pitt on live television?" he whispered furiously. "Yes," one producer said grimly. "And it's trending everywhere already." Jimmy sighed, trying to regain control before the show went off the rails. He returned to the camera, plastering on a fake smile. "Well, folks, that was unexpected. We'll be right back after this short break." The commercial break was filled with panic. ABC executives were already on the line, demanding answers. By the next morning, every major entertainment outlet carried the story. Brad Pitt explodes on Jimmy Kimmel. Hollywood star walks out mid-interview. Paparazzi camped outside Brad's home, hungry for more. But Brad wasn't hiding. He issued a short but powerful statement through his publicist. Greater than, I will not allow my personal life, especially matters concerning my children, to be reduced to cheap jokes. I walked out of that interview to set a boundary. I stand by that decision. The statement divided Hollywood. Celebrities began weighing in. Some backed Brad. Jennifer Aniston, surprisingly, was quoted saying, "Good for him. Enough is enough with the constant ridicule." Others defended Jimmy, saying late-night shows were supposed to be playful. Jimmy, however, was fuming behind the scenes. His ratings had spiked after the incident, but he felt humiliated. On his next show, he addressed it with sarcasm. "Well, folks, you might have heard Brad Pitt had a little moment here last night. Guess I'll need security next time I invite him. Maybe a punching bag too." The audience laughed, but the bitterness was obvious. Brad, hearing this, finally broke his silence during a press conference for his film. When asked about Jimmy's remarks, Brad replied, "I don't care if he mocks me. But when kids are involved, that's a line I won't let anyone cross. If standing up for that makes me the bad guy, so be it." The crowd erupted in applause. His co-stars stood by him. Even some of Jimmy's own fans started questioning whether late-night comedy had gone too far. Weeks later, ABC quietly announced that Brad Pitt was no longer welcome on Jimmy Kimmel's show until further notice. Industry insiders whispered that it was less about Brad's outburst and more about the backstage clash between Brad's team and the network. Brad, however, didn't seem bothered. His film went on to break indie records, and critics praised his performance as raw and deeply human. Meanwhile, Jimmy's reputation took a hit. Many accused him of being insensitive, using celebrities' personal pain as cheap laughs. The Showdown became a cultural moment, a debate about the boundaries between comedy and cruelty, entertainment and exploitation. Brad Pitt had been kicked off Jimmy Kimmel's show, but in the eyes of many, he walked away with his dignity intact.